Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we got this 2012 Honda Accord 2-door 4-cylinder, and I'm going to show you how you can replace the rear brake pads and rotors on this vehicle. Alright guys, first thing you want to do is raise and support your vehicle. After you've done that, remove the wheels. Lug nuts on this vehicle are 19 millimeters. Go ahead and get that out of the way. And then you will see condition of your brakes. And you can see this one, it's metal to metal. All right. Next thing you'll want to do is remove the caliper bolts here, one up top and one at the bottom right there. These are 12 millimeters. Once you remove that, you'll be able to remove the caliper itself and put it off to the side. Now, there is a little spot right here where you can let it hang, but if you got a coat hanger or some mechanics wire or something like that, I advise you to use it just so you can secure it and it's not putting any pressure on your brake flex line. Alright guys, so next you'll be removing these 12 mil nuts or bolts here. That's for the caliper. Sometimes the caliper is kind of stuck on to the brake pad and it'll be difficult to remove this. So if you are facing that issue, you can grab a flathead screwdriver like that and just insert it in between, not sure if you'll be able to see that, between the caliper piston and the brake pad, and then you can pry it to the side. This will push the caliper piston slightly inwards, allowing you and the brake pad to clear the edge of the rotor. So hopefully we don't have that issue here. And I've already loosened these bolts up. And you can just wiggle or use a screwdriver here so you could get the caliper out of the way, just like that. Alright, and you can just rest it right there. And next thing you will see are these springs that go in the back of the brake pads. You can just pull off one corner and then the other one will slide right off. And you will be doing the same thing to the bottom. And then you will be able to remove the brake pads. Again, here's where your screwdriver will come in handy. So good idea to have one of these laying around, and kind of difficult working with one hand. So I'll put the camera down for a second. Alright, so now we got the brake pads out of the way. Next thing you want to do is remove the two 17 millimeter bolts. One of them is right here and the other one is right up top here. Okay, go ahead and remove those. This will allow you to remove the caliper bracket, and then I'll show you how to remove the rotor. Alright guys, so the caliper bracket is removed out of the way. Just a quick tip here and a note. The top bolt up here, because of the design of this hub assembly here, the spindle, it's very difficult to get a 17 socket into place properly. So I strongly suggest and advise you to use a wrench instead. Alright, so it'll just make things a little bit easier because of the tight space here. Okay, so moving on, now you'll be removing the rotor. And most likely, if you still have the original rotors on your vehicle, you're going to notice quickly that there are two Phillips screws, or sometimes one, that's on this. There's almost impossible to remove those with a screwdriver. What you need to get or use in this case is an impact screwdriver. And the reason being is sometimes these bolts do seize up in there and they're very difficult to remove. And if you attempt to use a screwdriver, you're most likely just going to damage it, and then you'll have to drill those out. So if you don't have an impact screwdriver, good idea to get one. They're fairly cheap. but it will make things so much easier for you, and I'm going to show you exactly why. Okay guys, so I've done many of these, and just another tip here, it's best to have the screw that you're working on at 12 o'clock here rather than sideways like this, or even at the bottom. So put it at 12 o'clock. This is the impact screwdriver that I was talking about. I've had this for many years, still working great to this day. So what you want to do is just insert it into the screw, and with a hammer you're going to be hitting the back of the screwdriver right here, and the impact is going to push the screwdriver in and also turn it at the same time. Sometimes it takes a few hits, especially if they're on there pretty tough. And as you can see, every time you hit it, the screw turns slightly. And this is how you avoid stripping the screw. This would have been very difficult for you to use a regular Phillips. Usually at the tips, they're very rusty, and you would definitely strip that. And now we're going to do the other one again at 12 o'clock. Going to insert it correctly, put a bit of pressure on it, and firmly hit it with the hammer. And this is the best way to remove these screws. Alright, so once you got the screws out, next thing you want to do is, with the same hammer, tap the rotor on each corner there, and that should free it up. And now you'll be able to remove the rotor quickly like that. With the rotor out of the way, next thing you want to do is clean the outer lip here on the bearing hub. All right, and then put anti-seize, and then I'll show you what to do after that. All right guys, so then next step now is to clean off the caliper bracket. And first thing you want to do is remove the hardware. And if you look inside here on the grooves, you want to make sure that this is nice and clean and very smooth. You don't want any lumps, bumps, or humps in here. This will cause premature wear and tear to your brake pads, because what will happen is when you press the brake, the pad will go in, and when you release the brake pedal, if there's any obstruction in the way, it will not allow the brake to slightly move back so that it's no longer making contact with the rotor. I've seen many vehicles coming in with only one brake pad worn out totally. It's because of obstruction in the grooves here due to corrosion. So your objective here is to make sure it's nice and clean. The best way to do that is to get a file. If you have a good quality file, you can use this kind where it's like a circle, but the triangle shape is much better, because this will allow you to get into the sides and into the grooves in here. So just make sure it's nice and clean. Do not use a wire wheel. Maybe you could use it as at the end just to polish it or finish it off. But the wire wheel will not get rid of stubborn rust spots. All you'll be doing is you'll just have a shiny rust spot. That's all you'll have. The obstruction will still be there. So definitely I recommend using a file. Okay, so you want to make sure these are nice and clean. And then after you're done both of them, you can go ahead and add some anti-seize here before you put your new hardware into place. Alright, so once you got your calipers nice and clean, next thing you want to do is remove your slider pins. Alright, so just going to make sure you got a little rag on hand. And grab one quickly here. Alright, so just pull them out of the boots there. And whatever old grease that you see on there, try to get as much of that off as possible. You can reinsert it a couple of times. If you like, you can even remove the boot itself. Okay, just make sure when you put it back that it's on correctly. So once you see there's not much coming out anymore, usually depending on the quality of brake pad that you buy, these lubricants will come with the brake pads. Not all of them, but if you don't have, if it does not come with any, you can. What I use is brake lubricant by Easy Slide. Just get a tube of that, and you don't want to go crazy with this stuff. You just want to put a nice little line like that, and then I always put a bit on the tip there, just so we get it inside for sure. And what I like to do as I'm inserting it, I just spin it, and with one finger, just make sure that it gets coated nice and evenly, like that. And just push it down, and you may see that you may have some air pockets trapped in there. And if you do, that's okay. So what we'll be doing is, there's the boss, he's pissed off. And just grab a little flathead screwdriver. Let me grab my screwdriver 1 second. And with your flathead screwdriver, just lift it up slightly so the air can come out of there, and then just squeeze it down. And just try to get as much air pockets out of that, and you might see some of the grease coming out. That's okay. Once you got it down like that, go ahead and wipe off any excess. And that's pretty much it for that. I'm going to do the other side, and then we're going to go back to the vehicle and put this caliper back on. Alright guys, so just for the sake of making this video a bit shorter, once you've cleaned off the hub here and you put anti-seize on there, go ahead and install your rotor. Just make sure that you put some anti-seize on the tips of the screws there, and you don't have to crank these too hard. Just make sure they're nice and tight. Okay, and then you go ahead and install the two 17mm screws for the caliper bracket. And with your hardware, your new hardware into place, you can now go ahead and install your brake pads. Actually, before we install the brake pads, let's go ahead and put the caliper piston back into position by pushing it back. And in order to do that on this vehicle, this is the type that you turn and push in at the same time. It's very handy to have one of these, a disc brake caliper tool set. Okay, and I'll show you how to use this in a second. Alright, so first thing you want to do is select the correct die for this. Okay, as you can see the two dots here, just make sure that they fit nicely into the slots here. Okay, and you want to kind of clean this too. It's just old grease. Just make sure that it sits nicely and firmly in there. Once you got that, grab the other part of the tool set and just put it on the end there. Slide it into position with your die in place. So we'll need to back this out slightly because this caliper was metal to metal, so it came out all the way. Yeah, this caliper was out almost all the way. Lucky for this guy, but it looks like it's still in its position. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to attempt to push this in slightly, and then I'll use the tool afterwards. I had no choice. I went ahead and I used the needle nose plier, and I managed to turn it and push it slightly enough so I could set up my tool properly, because again, the caliper piston was out so far that it wasn't giving my tool enough space. So once you have this locked into place, you want to turn it in the clockwise direction, and while you're doing this, you can also clean at the same time. And as it turns, you can turn the handle to tighten the space again, and then turn it, and turn this, and then just slowly you'll compress the piston back into position. That way, once we install our brake pads, the piston is ready to go into its place. If you remember those two springs that were on there earlier, I'll show you what that does. It kind of separates the brake pads, so you kind of want to have this ready first, so that as soon as you got the brake pads into position, again, you can just quickly slide this so that the brake pads don't fall out. And you want to keep doing this until it bottoms out. And there it is, bottomed out. Now you can release it and remove your tool. See the calipers pushed back into position. Alright, next, so you want to grab your brake pads. Just want to slide them into position here. And again, if your caliper bracket is nice and clean, it should go in there without any issues. Okay, so now you're going to put the springs into position. Alright, so when you're going to install your springs, you'll see the slots there, and as you put the springs on, because they want to open up, you just got to hold the brake pads with your hands. Okay, just hold them together. As you can see, they want to jump out of place. That's why it's nice to have the caliper ready to go. So as soon as you got that, you can go ahead and position your caliper. That way the pads don't go jumping on you. And once you got it like that, you can go ahead. Once you got it like that, you can go ahead and install your 12mm slider pin bolts. And go ahead and tighten those up. And once again, I'll be putting the torque specs for these bolts in the video. Before you're done, just make sure that your brake flex line is not twisted up in any way, and that there's no issues there. And that's pretty much it for doing the one side. You can go ahead and do the other side now, and it's pretty much the exact same. Well, it is the exact same thing. So once again, if you found this video helpful and informative, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so I can continue making great videos like this. And to all my subscribers, thank you very much. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you and have a great day. Alright guys, so whenever you're doing a brake job, whether it's front or rear, always remember one thing. Once you've completed the job, turn on your vehicle, and always do not forget to pump your brake pedal. Pump your brake pedal at least 3 or 4 times. This will allow the brake fluid to travel back through the pistons and let the pistons sit in their normal position, and you will notice the difference in the pressure in the brake pedal. Again, you want to do this after every brake job. Otherwise, you'll get a little bit of a surprise if you start to move the vehicle immediately. Without doing that, will not have brakes. So start the vehicle when it's in park. Pump the brake pedal 3 or 4 times. And that's it.